Lincoln, I'm going to start. You want me to start letting people in? Jim Sco. Hi, Krista.
Hi, you guys. Oh, I suppose I can change my background here.
Hi.
Morning, Krista.
Morning.
How are you?
I'm pretty good. I had a downdraft in my stove today, this morning, so a little smoky.
Hi.
It's all good now.
Doug, Jim, everybody.
Lisa Lawrence is on. It'd be funny to have to do a Zoom meeting to see my neighbor.
Hey Doug, I'm babysitting, so I'm going to keep my thing on mute.
Trying to get this to be a younger, demographic. So
Well, not sure we've heard from David.
Uh,
Not yet.
Oh,
So
there's
we-
Miles.
Sandy called me last night, so we know that Brian's not coming. Is that correct? And Sam's
Apparently,
not coming.
yeah, apparently neither of them are coming. That was the first I heard of it.
And then possibly David isn't coming because we haven't heard from him, but he's supposed to. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Well, I'm happy to serve as chair as Sandy asked me to, if that's what it comes to, unless Miles or somebody else wants to do it.
I'm sure you're gonna get a lot of takers there,
Yeah,
Kristen.
we might have to arm wrestle for that.
Yeah, I like that you left it open to volunteer. That's good. Thanks.
Okay, so I guess the important thing is to make sure we have quorum. Is that correct? Which I think we do. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. All right. Well, why don't we just go ahead and start, and then if David comes, I'll surprise him with the crown of authority and pass it back to him. So I'm going to call this meeting to order at 8:31 on April 15th. And the first order of business is to open the meeting to public comment. And this is the time for anyone to share their questions or concerns with the commission. It isn't necessarily a time where we will discuss or pursue any of the items brought up, but it is a time for these things to be brought to the attention of the commission. So I'm wondering if there's anyone besides Bruce Robinson, who would like to speak, make a public comment. Go ahead, Bruce.
Yeah, so I was just wanting to be sure that we can make comment later on during the agricultural policy section of the meeting.
That should be correct. Is that right? This is the actual public hearing finally, or again, for the ag policy. So
Okay,
yes,
thank you.
the answer to that is yes. Anyone else from the public who may want to comment at this time, just not related specifically to the ag policy? Steve, you want to? No. Okay, I don't see any hands up. So we will move on to approval of the March 18th minutes, 2022 minutes. Are there any comments or corrections on that, on those minutes?
No corrections. They look good.
Okay, I was not at that meeting, so they looked really good to me. They let me know exactly kind of what went on, so that was appreciated. So I don't think we vote on this, do we? If there are no corrections, we just go ahead and assume that they take them as approved. Is that correct?
I think you should vote to
Okay.
accept the minutes.
Okay, I can't remember. Okay, so do I have a motion to approve the minutes from the March 15th, 2022 meeting?
Yes, I move to accept the minutes from the March meeting, although I think we haven't been doing this past, but let's do it.
Is there a second?
Second it.
Okay, I'll take Mike. And any further discussion? All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No one abstains. Okay, the minutes are accepted. That is great. We're going to move on to the Chair and Commissioners report. And the item that's actually listed is the San Juan Island Community Conversation Recap. Who would like to do that for us?
Well, I guess I'll start. I thought it went really well. This time around, we're focusing on the evolution of stewardship. So I did a brief presentation, and then Doug did a really great presentation focusing on San Juan. And we had a good Q&A. Not as many people as we'd hoped showing up, maybe about a dozen, something like that from the public. But all in all, I thought it went well. Other reactions from other people who are there?
Steve?
Mike,
Oh, well, hang on. Go ahead, Mike.
This Mike, I'll comment. This is my first one that I attended. I thought it was really well done. At first, I thought it was more, we spent a lot of time telling them everything about what we were doing. I was wondering whether it would stymie their feedback back to us, which is really what I wanted to hear about what they were thinking. But it didn't. It was a great conversation. I'll second the comment about Doug and the others that helped contribute to it, demonstrated a real good knowledge of what we're doing and the challenges and had a lot of good answers. So I think it was excellent. I'm looking forward to the next one.
Steve, I think you were on that call. You participated in that.
Yeah, good morning. Yes, I did. I want to just mirror Mike's comments. I have participated in hundreds of such community conversations with the Park Service in Alaska and here and there and everywhere. And given our Zoom considerations and everything, I thought that both Lincoln's presentation and Doug's presentation were excellent. And I didn't think they went on too long at all and really kind of brought us up to a good place for commenting. But I too was really disappointed in how few folks tuned in, but I think you guys did a great job.
Yeah, I just listened in as an observer, not as a commissioner per se, and I thought it was a great meeting. The presentations were really clear and passed on a lot of information and allowed ample time for the public that was there to at least respond. And I thought there was some really good discussion that went on. So yeah, we could use more people, but the ones that were there actually were fully participating. So I thought that was good. So for any Lopez people that are on here, our next one's coming up. And if you can get more people to attend our meeting on the 20th, that would be great. Any other comments from commissioners or reports?
No, I'll just bring up that we're still needing to have a liaison with the Climate and Sustainability Advisory Committee with the county. And so I can talk to Jim about it. Maybe that's something we could do after the meeting, because we'll have to send that liaison to a quarterly meeting with that group to coordinate what the land bank is doing with other agencies in the county. So just keep it on the horizon.
Okay, great. Thanks for that reminder. All right, if there is no other comment coming from the commission, we'll move on to the county council update from Christine Minnie. Welcome.
Good morning. Good morning. I didn't pre-check my camera. Thank goodness it's okay. Happy Friday. It is a whipped cream in my coffee kind of day, and I'm glad to be here. As Miles just pointed out, well, as Miles just alluded to, the county now has established in its entirety the Climate and Sustainability Committee. It is advisory to council and will be managed by the newest Department of Environmental Stewardship. There were many applications. I think, in fact, it numbered probably around 20 for 11 seats. It could have even been about 25. And there was a vetting process with interviews that the staff conducted. And based on those interviews, staff made recommendations to fill all of the seats of the committee. And those were approved last Tuesday at council meeting. And yes, each sort of outlying commission is now on the hook to pick a liaison to attend quarterly meetings, which I think all in all is not too much of a commitment, and I think could be pretty exciting for whoever that is. As you know from previous reports that I've given you, the county is constructing a very large, beautiful building on Beaverton Valley Road and is going to house many different departments. I know I talked about this maybe last month or 2 months ago, but since then it has been determined that based on the size of the building, and it's massive, that, well, an idea was created that perhaps we could pursue a whole second floor in this space that prior or in the initial design was very empty. And so we are pursuing the idea of this second story in the building, and it would create meeting space, touchdown spaces, all in all, just more space to maybe further, optimize building consolidations. And we only just stepped into that process, so we'll see where it goes. If you are so inclined, and I think most of you are, the Great Islands cleanup is scheduled for Saturday, April 23rd between 10 and 2. If you are in Lopez, you'll meet in Lopez Village Park. Orcas will meet at the Village Green, and Shaw will have a drop-off at the Shaw baseball field. San Juan Island, this is fun, is going to meet at the San Juan Brewing Company parking lot. And I think they have some fun stuff planned. I learned that the event started in 2014 by locals, but then was Public Works got involved in about 2016, which they offered organizational support and some funding through state litter grants. LTAC met a couple weeks ago over a couple of days to hear all of those 27 applications. Each applicant gives some type of presentation to support their wish for LTAC monies. It is safe to say, although not yet approved by council, 26 out of the 27 applications were approved for some amount of funding, and most of them full funding. That will be on the agenda for the April 19th meeting, Tuesday. Next Friday, the 22nd, council is hosting a sort of a special meeting, a roundtable with the State Office of USDA Rural Development. I think ultimately their objective is to highlight some of the projects they currently have going in the county, which include some amount of funding, I believe, for the town's new sewer plant, as well as some solar projects, perhaps on Orcas. And there's a third one I'm not very familiar with yet, but I will be next Friday. And I think that they're also going to be handing out some large amounts of money to some new projects that are on the horizon. Anyway, that is next Friday, the 22nd from 11 to 1 in council chambers, but I also believe it'll be on Teams. I feel like I've forgotten 12 things, but that's my report for today. Does anybody have any questions?
I have a question. Don't get too happy.
Okay.
Wait a second. Well, I just have a question because I wasn't at the last meeting, but in the minutes, it is the tourism master plan. They're still calling it tourism master plan, at least in our minutes, but I've read and seen the announcement for the meetings that are coming up. We're calling it the sustainable tourism plan or something. I think they've tweaked it a little bit. So I'm just kind of wondering, because the last sentence here said that further updates are warranted. I was wondering if there were any, now that it looks like they've set some island-wide meetings, some island-specific meetings. And do you know what the process is? Like, can you give us?
I actually, I will tell you that, no, first of all, I'll say no. I have not been involved in that in any way. It has not come to or before council. You know, from the source at this point. In fact, it's still in its infancy in that way, that, you know, they're still forming it themselves. There have been a couple of staffing shifts, which have affected that a little bit, but here's the good news. Liaison from Land Bank is going to get very well acquainted with this process and be able to inform that really well, I do believe. Wow.
Do we have a liaison for that group?
No, that's what Miles was talking about, like meaning, it's my belief that the Climate and Sustainability Committee is also going to have their fingers in this, in the sustainable tourism study, or whatever they choose to call it, or whatever Department of Environmental Stewardship choose to call it, as opposed to tourism master plan. So the liaison who you choose for the Climate and Sustainability Advisory Committee will definitely have sort of a running knowledge of how that's going down.
Okay. I'm interested in the second part of that liaison position, but maybe not the whole, now that you said that. So I might call you later. We can negotiate that.
Okay.
Thank you for that. I was just curious what was happening. I am very interested in that topic and that process and the many things related to that after all those studies and stuff. So, okay. Thank you.
And I think I just would like to offer for you, like from your position here on Land Bank Commission, if I were you, I'd also very, I think that you could just consider calling Kendra Smith. She's an open book and she's really the spearhead here.
Okay. I will do that. All right, well, thank you for that little tangent over there. Any other questions? Mike? Oh, no,
Mike, he was just fixing his shirt, I think.
he was just bidding on something. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you for joining us again. Nice to see you. Oh, Lincoln, sorry.
Yeah, let me just jump in. One of the things that is going to be funded under LTAC is the next iteration of the Parks, Trails, and Natural Areas Plan.
Mm.
So that one, that's going to be going on through this year, probably. Well, we'll need to get that wrapped up early next year because it keeps us eligible for grant funding, and we are applying for grants. But one of the interesting things this time around too is that it's looking like there is going to be a vote for roads and trails levy this fall. Is that right, Christine? Am I correct in that?
Yes, I can tell you that the conversation is heavy, but there has been no action.
Okay, well, this is a good opportunity since we're doing this, the Parks, Trails, Natural Areas Plan now. It may take on a bit more importance than usual in that there could be money available if that levy is passed for the trail portion of it anyway. So it'll be a good thing for people to participate in, and it'll be great if the planning process could identify a few trails projects, and mostly these are going to be in conjunction with public works road right of way. So they could be separated bike paths or other trails along those lines. But it'd be great to be able to identify a few of those which might have a high chance of success in the short term. That would give the community something to consider when they're potentially voting on this levy.
It's exciting. I really look forward to this. I do want to add one thing, please, because I just saw, Doug's fun little picture there right in the middle of my screen, that I forgot to mention that I really look forward to going. I'm going to take a small trip, as you all probably know, with several other people on Monday evening, I believe, to get a glimpse of the Hauschka property. So thank you, Doug. I'm really looking forward to it.
We're going to try and arrange another trip since you weren't able to make it to the Beaverton, and we'll do a wander out there as well.
I think that's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, if we're ready at this point, we will move on to the first quarter financial report. Thanks, Christine.
All right, good morning, everybody. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so first thing to note here that these financial statements and quarterly reports are in draft form. Due to the third Friday of this month coming so early, the auditor's office did not completely close out March. So although doing this report, I did see all significant expenditures and revenues that did come through are on here, just due to the fact that it wasn't officially closed by the auditor's office. This is in draft form. To start out, we are going to begin with the Conservation Area Fund. First item of note highlighted here is total cash on hand decreased over fourth quarter 2021 by about $2.1 million. This is due to the purchase of the Higgins property on Lopez Island. We also made the final payment on Richardson Marsh fulfilling our promissory note there. Real property will be adjusted to reflect new acquisitions at some point throughout this year. We do have a couple other projects and properties that we are working on, and upon those completions, how those end up, I will be adjusting the real property assets. Interest rate for LGIP, the local government investment pool. Look at that giant bump to 2.34%. Still extremely low, but always worth noting.
Or 0.234 anyway.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. So our 1% REIT for first quarter came in at 1.159321. And this is 28.98% of the budget for this year. And a very interesting notice is that comparative to first quarter 2021, we are actually outpacing 2021. It's a little too hard to really project very far out in a very accurate form. But if things continue to trend, we should have a very good year overall. Would like to notice the transfer to stewardship made in March was in line with the budget approved by the commission and the council for 1/4 of the total enhancement and operations at 512,256. Acquisition costs, again, this number January reflects the 2.5 million, reflects the Hauschka, or sorry, not Hauschka, the Higgins acquisition. February's acquisition costs are the final payment for Richardson Marsh. And then in March, we paid for our earnest money payment for the Hauschka Preserve, Katy Mountain. As you see, budget way over budget at this point. This was to be expected, as we've kind of seen here in the beginning of 2022. A lot of things have changed and come and gone and changed. So we did decide for the biennium budget to not include projects that we were currently working on, that those would be added to the budget later on in the year after those were finalized, based on the process that we have to go through with council and the auditor's office. Those will be added to the First Amendment for 2022. And then I would like to note the administration costs are 5.77% of our total revenue, working well within the 10% goal. Moving on to the combined financial statement for the Stewardship Management Fund. Again, cash did increase to 216,000 over first quarter, or over fourth quarter 2021. Retained earnings. This number is based on the fact that in fourth quarter 2021, we did make the final transfer from the Conservation Area Fund to Stewardship for the loan that we had for the acquisition, or for the promissory note and loan for Richardson, for the purchase of Richardson Marsh, as well as the fact that the final site enhancement and operations transfer was made based on budget, given that we came a little bit under budget for operations. There were some extra funds there. all of these funds are wrapped up into the ending cash, but are also accounted for in the biennium budget for the amount of projects that we have going on in 2022. Sale of plant material. We had a very nice, oh, sorry about that. Sale of plant material in March. That reflects the spring native plant sale that we did in conjunction with the Master Gardeners Foundation. This is the first time that we did a collaborative plant sale, and it went very well. It's always great to have great partnerships, and we look forward to doing that again. Additional revenue, again, is the transfer in March for the site enhancement based on the quarterly amount for the entire year. Expenditures for the stewardship fund. We were at 256,842 in stewardship management and 60,000 in property management and maintenance. I think this is pretty typical for first quarter. There's a lot of preparation as opposed to expenditures for projects that early in the year, so that will pick up. And that is everything for this quarter. If there are any questions.
Yeah, I just am going to point out, kind of reiterate, first of all, thanks to Aaron for appearing from Arizona for this report. He's on vacation, but agreed to take a little bit of time to give this to us. So thank you, Aaron. Just to reiterate something that he said, our 2021 budget is not yet, since we had a number of acquisition projects in there which did not happen, that has yet to be basically carried over into 2022. So that's what will happen in the first amended budget. So those numbers you see, like the $500,000 for acquisition for 2022, that will change significantly as we fold those projects from 2021 into this budget. So we should, I'm not sure if there's a trajectory for doing that first amended budget. Aaron, have you heard anything about that?
I don't have a timeline. I haven't heard anything from Mylene, but I have, anytime we make any significant change to what the budget is, she has those numbers to speed up the process for when she tells us, hey, we're going to be doing this. Then she has everything where we're at, and I'll be able to put it in form for approval by the Land Bank Commission and on to the council for approval. But at this time, we do not have a date.
So we'll probably be pulling that together for my guess for the next meeting, at least having something for the commission to look at, so you all are clear on exactly where we stand on things.
So the May meeting. Okay, Mike?
Thank you. Being new, I'm trying to understand some of this. So the 2022 budget for REIT is $4 million.
Yes.
And last year, we achieved 6.7, and the year before 5.6. Is this, why is the budget 4 million instead of more closely aligned to the last couple of years? Thanks.
So the goal has always been to be as conservative as possible. Last year and previous years, we kind of set that bar at 3 million. This year, we did actually raise it to 4 million. As to, you know, I think it is smart, especially when we come in to a financial or to a housing market that we have right now. It can be very unpredictable. And I think it was kind of just agreement that it makes sense to to raise the first, the original budget to reflect a very conservative number, and we could always adjust that from at any point whenever we do a new amendment. But with, not really being able to have a good perspective of where this year might turn out, based on, you look at what's out there and what's available, it's really hard to predict. So we didn't really want to make that huge jump. Instead, we just raised it from a conservative 3 million from previous years to 4 million this year.
So does it affect anything? I mean, if I look at it so far in the first quarter, we're right on 2021's run rate. And so I'm basically looking at it saying, well, we're probably $2 million under in our projection of revenue, at least. And I could be wrong, and conservatism is great. But does it affect our thinking? Does it affect projecting acquisition activity? Anything about availability of funds, et cetera? I'm just wondering how we think about it. I'm okay with conservatism, but this is probably not very realistic. Having said that, I wouldn't change it. I'm just wondering how it affects your thinking, Lincoln, particularly yours, maybe. Is it just?
Yeah, Lincoln, if you want to touch on that, just
Looks like Jim wants to jump in here.
Okay.
I was just going to say, Mike, that we're kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop in the real estate market. There's very little, if any, inventory. So if any time in the last few years to be conservative with a revenue budget for the REIT, I think this is the time. If Sandy were here, she'd give us a better understanding of the real estate market, but I think that it is probably prudent for us to scale back a little bit in our planning and be as conservative as possible. If in the next quarter we see the same kind of strength in the real estate market, then yeah, we can make an adjustment in our budget for us and for council and reevaluate our planning going forward. But I believe in the conservative nature of our thinking on this number.
Okay, I appreciate that, Jim and Aaron and Lincoln. I just wanted to understand the background and how we got to a number that I would consider, at this point anyway, very conservative. I'm okay with that. I just needed to understand the background. Thanks.
Yeah, I'll just add, Mike, that I don't think it's really impacted our acquisition projects at this point. We haven't had one that's come along, which we've decided not to do because we don't have enough funds. There are some that are hanging out there, which we clearly would not be able to do, but I don't think that extra 2 million is going to matter, frankly, for some of those. We're talking about potential sale on Orcas of the property that we've been watching there, which may go for 11 million or something along those lines, and we're just not going to be able to play much of a role in that. And there's at least one other one in that category, but so far, no. If an acquisition project comes along that looks like it's something that we really need to do, then we'll get back into this conversation and see what the commission's comfortable with.
Yeah, so do you have in your mind a number for this year that we could do comfortably, or a range of numbers, or is there an analysis that shows here's where we stand financially right now, and throughout the rest of the year we could do $3 million worth of projects or something like that? Just trying to, because we are beginning to talk about some pretty big numbers, some projects that are pretty good size.
Yeah,
I just want to know how that changes our outlook of availability of resources, et cetera.
Yeah, so Mike, if you were to look at the financial materials that I sent out after the financial, the fund reports, the combined financial statements, we get into REIT specific, and that's where it breaks down all the years. And towards the bottom of that first page, or page 4, there's projections range. Gives us 3 projections for a minimum, maximum, and an average. So that's something to look at. So really, you know, if you look at the average, you know, it could be anywhere from 6.4 million to 6.9. But for the minimum projection range, it's given us 3.9 to 4.5. Were you able to see that one?
I've got that. That basically is telling us what the range of projections for REIT, right?
Correct.
Yeah, and my question, that was my earlier question. My question right now is a little different. It's just basically, is there an analysis that says, given certain scenarios, here's how much we would feel comfortable with minimum, maximum in terms of acquisitions? Because we're going to be talking about, we're talking about an acquisition that's, I think, pretty significant coming up. And how does that affect our ability to do other acquisitions, as an example? Or does it put us near the edge of what we're comfortable doing? That's I wondered if there was some thought given to that, and I'm sure there is. And is there such an analysis?
Yeah, we really do that on a case-by-case basis as we go through the course of the year. So I think what you're talking about is the Glenwood Inn acquisition, which is hugely significant. And we potentially are going to have to put 5 million on the table for it. So that certainly has a big impact on what else we can do. You know, in that case, we chose to also borrow money out of stewardship to do it, to be repaid. Now 50% of that acquisition is going to be covered by the Preservation Trust, but it's a risk for us, no question. And in the past, the commissions really wanted to keep a certain amount in the conservation area fund equal to at least a year's worth of operational expenses. So we're in that kind of 2.5 million range. And as we're budgeted with the acquisitions, including Glenwood Inn, and including that loan, we're projected to stay in the upper 2.89, something like that range going forward. So we're maintaining that cushion. If the Glenwood Inn project does not happen, then obviously we're going to have a significant amount of money that we could put into something else. I don't think we have a project to plug in if that one falls apart, but.
And Lincoln, don't we always, or periodically, we do the cash flow analysis over the however many years. And so if things start to change, if we get a significant project, we'll bring that back and we'll plug that in and figure out what the payment schedule looks like and how that impacts what we might be able to do over the course of the upcoming years. So there is kind of a process.
Right. Yeah, that number going out to the final year that we're authorized for currently, which is the end of 2026, we do keep an eye on projections, both for Conservation Area Fund and for the Stewardship Fund.
And if I can add one more thing for Mike and his edification, is that as much as we like to think of ourselves as relatively nimble when it comes to projects that may present themselves, we do tend to totter along and put a lot of thought into acquisition decisions and how it affects our budgets. And so I don't know, there's not really any kind of formula for it. I would say it's kind of an organic process, and fundamentally we just always will err on the side of being cautious and conservative. It's kind of a wishy-washy answer, but kind of the way it is.
Yeah, and when we're not allowed to go over budget as a county department. So when we're dealing with funds that we're really projecting into the future with the housing market, we just need to stay as conservative as possible. And that's why Lincoln and Jim alluded to, the fact that we do, case by case basis, we take everything into consideration.
Okay, any other financial questions for Aaron? Thank you so much for that update. That's great. I think it is kind of interesting that REIT is kind of going up even this year. And like Jim said, the inventory we've been told is quite small or minimal, but apparently there's enough out there that's selling that we're still ahead of the game this month compared to last month and this time last year. So
yeah, I've seen, especially what happened in March was I think it was the last day of March. There was a huge sale, a 10 million plus sale, and that makes a major impact. That brings our number from, are we going to stay on budget for the month of 300,000 to totally exceeding that? Yeah. And I've noticed that all 3 months here, January, February, and March, there would be at least one, really large sale that would make a huge impact. So, even though the amount of sales are down from what I had seen around 50 to 55 sales per year, we're down about 20 or 30% of that, but the prices are just so much higher. So these sales that are happening are just making a bigger impact, just not with as many sales.
Right. Yeah, it's amazing.
I think that's, one of the big concerns here is about volatility. And going into the last recession, there was a pretty clear pattern, which is not, I'm not suggesting that we're repeating this, but what happened is that we steadily reduced the volume of transactions going from 2005 through 2007, even though REIT continued to go up because it was funded by the higher dollar value sales. And so we're definitely seeing that now. I'm not suggesting if I could predict a recession, then I would be doing some different job, probably making a lot more money, but I can't. So the best we can do is just try and be conservative.
Okay, that's a wrap on finance. We're going to move into the director's report acquisition update.
Right, I'm going to skip over Glenwood Inn for a second and just touch on the other three. I think we can whip through those pretty quickly here. The resale of the Entrance Mountain parcel, if you remember, we're looking at reselling that with a Forever Wild conservation easement. And we have a tentative agreement with a neighbor to make that purchase. We're going back and forth now on the conservation easement to make sure we can come to terms. We'll be doing a purchase and sale agreement probably in the next few weeks, I would say. So that one's proceeding. I'm not sure if I have a good trajectory on when we might wrap that up. But the sale price is structured as an $80,000 purchase with a $30,000 donation. That doesn't really matter to us. The structure, the total dollar amount is what matters. And so for a Forever Wild property, meaning there's no potential to construct any residences, that's I would say significantly, well, it's definitely above market value. So I think we're doing well with that. Realistically, I think the neighbors are the only potential purchasers of that property. So that one's moving forward. The Hauschka Katy Mountain one, I had hoped we'd have wrapped up by now. We had a bit of a glitch in that when we went to council, this is the first time we've had questioned use of a deed of trust. So in this case, what we were doing, what we proposed was to purchase the property over a 4-year period. And what we've done in this case in prior acquisitions is to do a promissory note, which is guaranteed or secured by a deed of trust. The prosecuting attorney really took a hard look at this. I think this is the first transaction, honestly, that he's been pretty closely involved in. And that's unfortunately due to the fact that John Kane is still suffering with COVID. So that kind of turned things upside down. Our solution this time around is to drop the deed of trust angle. The sellers are fine with that. Basically, we're still using a promissory note. And they're just, if we don't pay, they will end up suing us over not paying. They don't have that instrument to foreclose on the property. But none of that's going to be a problem. Fortunately, they're fine with it. So that's coming back to the council next Tuesday. And we're hoping to close by the end of the month on that one. The Lopez Community Land Trust Trail, I'm also hoping to take to council on Tuesday. In that case, it's a donation. This is the property that's north of Lopez Hill. So it's just a trail that cuts from the Lopez Hill addition up to Lopez Sound Road. So no big issues there. Very happy to have worked with the Lopez Community Land Trust, both on purchasing the addition and on this trail easement donation. So that's those. Going back to Glenwood, as you all know, it's starting to be one of those long road type projects. But where we are right now is after going back and forth with the seller and seeing them list it, having a full price offer made and thinking we were out of it, then that offer being withdrawn. We've gone back and forth with them a bit and agreed on this 6.5 million number. Now that offer is being made by the Preservation Trust. It's their contract. They would assign it to us either in part or as a whole. But we're having to come up with the lion's share of that money up front. So the way it's currently written, we would have to come back to the commission in an amended budget. Since we've got budgeted 4.5 million, we'd have to come back for 5 if we're going to do this $6.5 million purchase. We have an appraisal underway because there's definitely a concern here that we're floating way out of appraised value territory. So we'll have to see how that comes out. We should have the appraisal the first week in May. If we were going to do the amended budget, we'd need to do it at that May 20th meeting. So we'll see what the appraisal says and go from there. But almost certainly we'll be coming back to you with that. The reason we're in this situation, I think, is and the virtue of this property, I think, is fairly clear in that it's just, it is so beyond unique for Orcas. And looking at it from the perspective of preservation of shoreline, but also public access to shoreline. There's just nothing out there really. This is kind of it for Orcas for significant shoreline that might be accessible. That's always been an issue that's come up in the Orcas community, given their lack of access to shoreline properties. So the value is pretty clear, but we're just going to have to see how the appraisal comes out and what people's appetite is, including council, and they're going to have to weigh in on it too. So more to come on that one. I don't know if there are questions on it.
Miles?
Yeah, Lincoln, can you just give an explanation of how it works with the partnership with the San Juan Preservation Trust on this? How that deal is being, I don't know. I guess I don't understand the role. If you mind, just explain that for a minute.
Sure. Well, the reason they're making the offer, first of all, is that they have the ability to put in significantly more earnest money than we do. So in this case, they're putting in $100,000 of earnest money, which helps this convince the seller that you're serious. Our limit is 20,000 in earnest money, so we just can't even come close to that. And any earnest money we put forward has to be refundable. That's just in our ordinance. The way the partnership is going to work here, I'm not sure what the final structure is going to be, whether we'll take joint ownership initially yet. That's what we've done in the past with them, with the Preservation Trust, then purchasing a conservation easement after the fact. The reality is neither organization has enough money to go forward and close on the property on their own. So the Preservation Trust is going to be putting forward, if the number is 6.5, they'll be putting forward 1.5, and they've actually secured a loan against other assets to cover that amount. There's still a lot of details to work out as far as how closing will happen and what that looks like. In the end, the idea is very similar to what we've done in other projects with them, where we'd end up owning the property outright and they would own a conservation easement over the property.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Lincoln? I have a couple, Lincoln. So when you say the full price offer was made and then rescinded, what was that? Was that offer 6.5?
No, the full price offer was 7.9.
Thank you. And well, we got such a deal. What if the appraisal comes in significantly lower? You're saying like we're kind of flirting with what my understanding in the past was that we could not pay more than appraised value, but there seems to be some wiggle room with that. So I'm kind of wondering now, say it does come in significantly lower, what does that do? What does that mean?
I think it's going to be quite problematic for us. And the situation is really that we strive in every single one of these deals not to pay more than appraised value. That does not always happen. We are not 100% limited by appraised value. It becomes a decision that council has to be comfortable with, basically. But we've, in general, stayed under. Also, one of the ways we've really saved a lot of money is by having partnerships and by getting grants to help us purchase properties. So I think if you did an analysis of appraised value of properties versus what we ended up paying, we'd be way, way under that over the course of the program, just by virtue of bringing in those other dollars. So if it's way under in this case, though, the Preservation Trust is not able to pay over appraised value. And they'd be purchasing a conservation easement. That easement is going to have more value from an appraisal standpoint than the underlying ownership, because it will be eliminating all of the development units. So even in that case, though, they're going to have to be assured that the property will appraise. They're governed by IRS rules and also by the Land Trust Alliance rules. They're an accredited land trust, so they really have to stick to those practices very clearly.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yep. Just gives me an idea of a little bit. And so then my last question is on that earnest money limitation. The land bank, you said, can put down 20, is limited to 20,000 and it has to be refundable. Is that figure a percentage of a project, or is that a fixed dollar amount?
It's a fixed dollar amount. There's an ordinance about earnest money, which I think was passed back in sometime in the 90s. So that was the number that was attached to it.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you. Any other questions? So we're at 9:30. I'm hesitant to move anything too far forward on the public hearing on the ag policy, because we published that as happening at 10:10. So we can either just take a short break now and then fill in with outreach and volunteer report after a break, future agendas, and then just see where we land. How does that sound? Okay, so
I think that sounds good, Krista. We probably should take a little bit more time on the future agenda items also, since we've got that long list, some of which is still relevant, some of which is not. And I think our hope was to go through that a little bit and knock some of those off the list and choose others that we might want to focus on.
Okay, then what I would suggest is that we take a break until 9:40 and then come back and do the future agenda items until 10:10. That gives us half an hour to do those. And then we'll go into the public hearing, and then saving the best for last, outreach and volunteer report. We'll wrap up the meeting. Okay, we'll see you in 10 minutes. Oh, I just want to make sure that Lincoln is on board 10 miles. Miles, are you there? Are you?
It's pretty tentative when you only have 4 commissioners.
I know. We should make some big decisions today.
That's right.
Make things up.
Your chance to kill off all the Orcas projects.
Yeah. Well, here's an idea. Let's take care of that ag policy. That would be, let's just really go crazy, get that done. Okay, I'm gonna see if I can call him, I guess. If anybody has his phone number, all I have is an email for him.
I'll text him.
Oh, thank you. So Lincoln, do you think we can discuss future agenda items without a quorum? Since we're not going to vote on that?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay. We'll try to get him back on board, but so I'm just going to let you lead this discussion since you have such a nice long list. Great.
Great.
Well, here's my question. Are we trying, what's our goal in looking at this? Do you want us to be trying to prioritize or to clear off ones that are no longer relevant? What would you like to have come out of this next 30 minutes?
Well, definitely trying to clear off some of the ones that aren't relevant. And maybe if we can come up with 1 or 2 that are priorities, we can focus on those in upcoming meetings.
And is there any intention of having any of these topics become special meetings like we did for Kaufelt? And I'm wondering.
Maybe.
Okay. Okay, now I'll turn it over to you.
All right, so do you all have this list in front of you? I'd rather not do a screen share if I don't have to here. So going down this list, the first one is about reclaiming tidelands currently in private ownership for conservation. I don't know what we have to talk about. In this case, it's if there are tidelands that seem like they're appropriate for conservation, we'll definitely be looking at them. I don't see us doing some kind of analysis of private tidelands around the county. We could spend pretty much infinite time on that project, honestly. It looks like Doug has something to say.
Yeah, goes back in time a little bit, but I believe 10 or 12 years ago, DNR was actively trying to do that. They were particularly looking for tidelands that, people didn't know they had, or all of that. So it may be worthwhile checking with them, so that might already be kind of underway with a different program.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I have a vague recollection of that, but I don't remember anything about how that's turned out or whether it's still going.
Mhm.
Well, we can check in with DNR on that one. Deer pressure solution. Well, we seem to have found sort of a deer solution for some of our islands with the hemorrhagic fever that's hit and reduced the populations quite a bit. I don't know whether that's been evenly across the archipelago, frankly. Certainly it's been very pronounced in impact here. Otherwise, things we were talking about before that the fever hit were hunting, which is a pretty difficult way to control deer populations, quite honestly. And there are some other possibilities, using birth control, an expensive option, but really a pretty tough one to do. I don't know if anyone has anything else to add on this subject.
So for any of these, are these topics that have just come up, been mentioned at a meeting for potential follow-up?
Yeah, some of them are that, some of them are actually things that have been brought up by commissioners or staff.
Mhm. Mhm.
And
And would
I,
it help? Go ahead, Doug.
I was gonna say, I think that, this is such a bigger issue than just the land bank, and it's a hard one, I think, for us to necessarily be the point people on it completely, but there's potential of some different research things that could be helpful in the kind of the vein of hunting. Elsewhere, black-tailed deer populations are very territorial, and so one of the senses that people have had is that if there is some hunting pressure in an area, it may reduce the population in that area to a point where it may have some beneficial levels. That my memory is that it's something on the order of 3 to 5 years before deer actually come back in and fill that vacuum. But we don't know that out here. I mean, we don't even know like populations all that well. So, the potential for helping fund some research could be helpful in making some of those decisions. So I guess I would just see us trying to continue to be a player with other groups, whether it's, Fish and Wildlife or the Terrestrial Managers Group. It definitely, this little dip from the hemorrhagic disease, it seems highly likely that's going to be a permanent situation.
Well, and there's still people doing bad things out
Jim's
there.
go older.
I just came across a deer last week that I had to put down because somebody had already shot it through and through. And that was really sad. But yeah, people are going to do that kind of stuff.
Mike?
Yeah, I was wondering if we have ranked or looked at these and up against our purpose.
Yeah, that was going to be my question.
I'm very sympathetic. We're getting a few more deer back, and actually, I'm glad they're coming back. But I don't know quite how that relates to our purpose, and maybe there's things on this list that are would have more of an impact on the purpose that we have.
Mhm. Yeah, that would be my suggestion as we work through these items, that we kind of at least initially look at how they fit into our mandate. I mean, deer hunting is part of what we do on properties and management of properties, but where it falls in the scale would be the question. So that's a good point, Mike. So let's just, as we go through Lincoln, we can kind of give that a look, a cursory look. Peter?
I just kind of think about this from the terrestrial managers group sort of standpoint. It seems like it's much bigger than the land bank. You know, we have a relatively small land base compared to the whole county. And, you know, I think part of it is mapping out huntable public and private lands, I guess, and figuring out more broadly, you know, what's feasible, but it's above the land bank. But I think it does relate to our mandate in that we're, you know, protecting native species and plant communities, and the deer have had a, you know, devastating impact on them. So I welcome the currently low level. I've noticed big changes on the landscape already, and they are going to come back. And I think, you know, at least what I'm trying to do on Orcas, as appropriate as management plans are updated, trying to incorporate huntability, you know, where appropriate, not to start doing it now necessarily, but to get them in the column of this place is potentially appropriate for hunting. So when that hopefully broader terrestrial managers group level conversation happens, we can, you know, come forward with here's where we're ready to allow it.
Miles?
Yeah, well, the deer management came up a couple years ago when we were talking about hunting on the preserves, and I would say that wildlife population dynamics isn't really a specific mandate of the land bank, but doing outreach and participation through hunting certainly falls into one of our categories. So I think attaching it to that seems like it has value. And I would agree with Doug that we have zero to very limited data on how many deer are out there, what the deer populations are, what the impact is, you know, quantifiably what the impact is, and what the hunting does for management. We don't really know if that's a compensatory harvest where it has zero impact on the population, or if it's actually helping reduce the population. So we don't really have any data. It's all very based on, I guess, intuition and observation, which is fine. So I would say I would categorize it under public involvement, really. And if we're gonna take it, if staff wanted to take it on as a project for stewardship management, maybe it would best start with what Doug suggested, which is collecting some data.
Mike?
Yeah, I was just trying to figure out a way to prioritize these things. And, you know, it's sort of like, which of these items would have the biggest impact on our mandate, on our purpose? And how are we doing now? There's some combination of those. If that's what we're trying to do, is say, which of these things do we want to put some energy towards in the next 6 months, 9 months, whatever? How do we prioritize that? How do we say, this one, if we could knock this off, this could have a big impact on looking back on how we did against our mandate a year from now. That's all I'm trying to emphasize.
Yeah.
Yep.
Aaron?
I was just going to offer that we do also do outreach to the private landowners that we hold conservation easement on, and several of them are involved in the WDFW hunting program, and they we share information that way. There's also there has been some research, Eric Long out of Seattle Pacific on Blakely, so maybe we can extrapolate from that, but I do think this is a pretty big topic, and I appreciate the I think we do what we can on public and private lands, and that we might be more effective in tackling other topics, as Mike had suggested with ranking.
Thank you.
So I kind of like Mike's idea of taking a look at this list and figuring out which ones really rise to the top rather than going through each one in succession. So what I would nominate off of this list for something that really we've been looking at quite a lot and will continue to do so, but that one down in the middle about the land banks collective big dream or goal for overall resiliency in the islands and the bioregion. I think that's a good one. You know, we've put some work into this, and I think this is going to emerge out of the Preservation Trust's conservation plan that they're doing, which I think they're going to be ready to unveil in June, something like that. So that's definitely something for us to come back to. It factors into the whole climate change question, which is clearly something that we've identified, or that the commission has identified as being extremely important. So I would stay tuned on that one. I think it makes sense for us to really try and come up with that vision, maybe over the course of this year.
Mhm. Are there any others that pop out if people have read through the list that they want to suggest? Let's say we look at 3 or 4, picking 3 or 4 off this list. I can say that dog parks are going to come back to your Lopez conversation probably on the 20th, but I don't think it requires a commission meeting on it. But
yeah, the dog question is an interesting one. I think on one hand, we're likely to be pressured to do dog parks. On the other hand, I think we're getting pressure from people to exclude dogs from certain areas. So not sure where that's headed, honestly. I think it's a case-by-case basis about excluding dogs or excluding them for part of the year on certain properties. So we have to have a good rationale for doing that. The dog park one is a little bit easier. I mean, it's very much at the fringe of our mission. We agreed to do what we did on Orcas with the off-leash area because it solved a problem, it solved a management problem for us, or helped solve a management problem, in that we had a corner of Crescent Beach Preserve, which was a real problem area, a lot of illegal activity, undesirable activity happening in that particular spot next to Buck Park. And so having that off-leash area there, I think has really helped address that dynamic, as well as providing a spot for that group when they're about to be kicked off of the port property there.
yeah, Mike?
Yeah, I just noticed that the third bullet and the fourth bullet both relate to tribal issues and tribe subjects. And we clearly have a mandate or a purpose that includes cultural items and things. And I'm wondering, does that, I don't know anything about those two. I'm just wondering, does it just by their nature and by our mandate, does that rise to the top or near the top?
Doug?
Yeah, this one's something that just I kind of keep coming back to, and I see that very linked with other parts of our mandate, and just observing what's happening on the landscape around us culturally and everything else. That I think this is going to be an issue that continues to come up. You know, you're seeing the land back movement taking place, and different things happening with private landowners in the islands. Certainly a lot of stuff happening across the border in Canada. And it's very, very linked in with habitat management in a number of areas. So I think we've had some good discussions on this in the past, in particular trying to kind of move the cultural part of the mandate from being more considered in sort of an archaeological and historical context into sort of contemporary sort of use or presence. But I think there's a lot to explore with co-management and other issues that are important and relevant and will be coming to us whether or not we kind of reach out to it.
I would concur that those two items would come, I would put them together, and I would like to see those pursued myself. Peter?
I guess another category that's not on the list is kind of non-traditional uses or something of land bank properties. Things that come to mind are wetland mitigation. We've talked about that a little bit. It's at staff level. We've gotten requests from Public Works to do wetland mitigation for road impacts on land bank properties. This topic of solar projects has come up a few times. I think Sandy talked about composting, or others have talked about composting facilities. So just kind of what the land bank is willing to do in those areas and where. I think it's probably some sort of policy development.
Thank you. Any others? So just kind of a quick stepping back. I just went through and quickly numbered these. And so the land bank's collective big dream that Lincoln brought up, can I see from the commission, is that one that resonates with commissioners who are present as a future topic, in-depth topic? I would say yes. Yeah, okay. I'm just going to try to see if we can quantify some of these by the time we're done. So, okay. And then for the two that we've just kind of grouped together, related to gaining more information about tribes, indigenous usage, whatever, those two topics, do those, how do those resonate with commissioners?
Yeah, it's important.
And not that I'm not concerned about staff, but I'm just going to kind of break to the chase here. Okay, and then I like Peter's, but I just added that as 16. So are there any others along that we haven't, that are further down in the list that someone would like to pitch for an in-depth discussion?
So that's Mike. I've got a quick question. Are some of these, the last one, modify mandate for climate change, clearly a hot topic, and parentheses retreat. And so did we do anything? I can't remember exactly. Did we do anything at the retreat related to this? And if not, should it be on our list? I mean, it's obviously a hot topic. That's it.
Yeah, well, I think we spent a fair amount of time talking about it at the retreat, and it's pretty clear that the commission is placing a high priority on dealing with climate change. As far as modifying the mandate, that's really not something that we can do. We can pick within the mandate, which is quite broad, areas that we might want to focus on, but changing the mandate is not possible. So I do think, though, that it's fairly clear there's a lot of desire to, well, one, I think if we're thinking about climate change, we need to work within a good framework to try and see what we can do, both in terms of acquiring properties to keep them from being developed, or to conserve larger, more resilient areas, and also from a management perspective, and dealing with some of the issues we've got, like overstocking of forests.
I think we should just change it to say, get rid of the word modify and put in the word interpret mandate to include climate change mitigation. I don't know.
And for clarification, Lincoln, is it not technically possible to change that mandate, but it takes legislative action? We would have to go back and modify the law. We can't just rewrite our mission statement, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I think part of that is enshrined in the state enabling legislation and then certainly in our ordinance. So never really a good idea to try and reopen state legislation.
Okay, Mike?
Yeah, so I would wonder if we need some sort of statement, guiding statement developed over the next 6 months on things that the land bank is going to do or consider or support in the area of climate change. In other words, what it's big enough of a topic to our community. The land bank has a responsibility, but what is that? I mean, what are we developing? And I know we're gonna be a part of this county group. Through that and other things, we probably should have a statement stating, here's what we think. Here's what we can do, and we're going to point towards, or here's what we're not going to do, relating to our impact on climate change.
So, Mike, I would suggest that we've got, looks like there's sufficient interest from the commission to pursue this, and that's now going into some solutions and things. So if you will hold that thought to when we have our in-depth discussion about climate change, that would be a great thing to bring back.
Will do.
Anything else in here? I'm kind of wondering about the quantify projects. I don't know where that came from or what that actually means. Do we know what that means, Lincoln?
I think that's disappeared down the memory hole.
Okay. And then the one I'm curious, I'm just bringing up some to get a little bit of info background so people know what we may or may not be prioritizing. The East Sound critical areas topic. Is that a Orcas-centric issue, or is it something that the land bank should be looking at as a whole?
Yeah, we really need Brian here to talk about that one. It's an issue that comes up when people are wanting to see conservation of areas within the UGA. And so the question is, well, number one, we're pretty careful about projects in UGAs because we're trying not to eliminate density in the place where density is supposed to happen. But there's still a question about conserving the resources in those areas and what role we should play, or is it best left to the regulatory arena? It's maybe a topic for more conversation.
So a more global discussion. And then the idea on the property tax bill, easements and donations. I don't know what that means.
I'm not sure about that either. We've thought about including information in people's tax bill to help us get the word out to folks about what we do. I'm pretty reluctant to wade into that because I don't think the people who are opening their tax bill are in a terribly receptive frame of mind. So I think we have other opportunities to reach people when they might be more open to it.
And then the topic that Peter brought up, this is intriguing to me, but I'm one person, the non-traditional use of land bank properties, because I think there is more public interest in seeing what else the land bank can do. And it might be worth taking some focused look on even hypotheticals and to kind of get a position or a feel for what we may or may not be able to do and what, if we can't do it, who we think could do it, to have some of that information or that education done with the commission. do other commissioners have any interest in learning more about that? Mike says yes.
Yeah, I mean, I actually think of the like I'm trying to organize, group these into different categories for how they relate to land bank policy level decisions. And so I think that is probably the most interesting and the one that we've covered the least is how to make use of the lands that we do have, which I think ties into the tribal access as well, because that's sort of a non-conventional use of the land bank preserves. And so that combined with other things that, you know, it ties into climate change too, if you're talking about like a wetland mitigation or other types of functions just besides trails and anything else. So I think that's probably the most interesting and the most unexplored part of this whole list.
So Lincoln, is it helpful to you to say that we have identified your resiliency item, the tribal access items, and the non-traditional use items as 3 good topics for the next few months, next year?
Yeah, I think that's great.
Anything else anybody actually just has to have on that list? All right. Great. All right, and 10:11, we're going to address the stewardship report and the final review of the draft agricultural policy public comment. So Lincoln, are we gonna, since I've just kind of took on chair at the last minute, are we having a little summary for like a typical public hearing, or with you giving us summary and then taking public comments and then having the commission discuss? Is that how we're doing this, or what's the structure you would like to have?
Well, I think we can have a brief summary and then open it up for public comment. I think Charlie's prepared to give a brief overview of where we've come on this one.
Okay, and then the intent is if there isn't massive modifications or corrections, whatever, that we would take action on this policy today.
Right.
Great. All right, Charlie, are you ready?
Sure. Yeah, I haven't prepared anything too thorough. This is kind of part 2 of the public review phase. We tried to do it last month, but didn't get it out well enough to public. So an extended period for response. Yeah, I sent out all the public written feedback we'd received. Just one comment, mostly around the climate change section from Adam Green, and that came in before last month also, so I mentioned it then as well. And what we're looking at now is still the same draft that was put out last month. Sandy had some thorough suggestions and edits for that, so I've made those modifications to a future final draft, and also looked at that climate change section, potentially some language change there based on Adam's comments, but that hasn't been put out at this point. I know we have some community input for this meeting now, so unless there's other questions, I think we can move into that.
Okay, then I'm just going to watch for hands being raised and try to do them in the order they show up, but all the hands will be addressed sooner or later. So is there anyone in the public that would like to make a comment on this policy? Bruce.
Yes, this is Bruce Robinson, and I am representing the San Juan Island Grange. And as you would probably guess, we're interested in seeing more food developed or grown or raised locally that would be consumed locally, as opposed to going off island to be consumed off island. I have a couple questions. First one has to do with land access, and it's relating to the idea of having a partnership, I'll just read this question. Is the land bank able to lease ag land to an outside agency, such as a nonprofit, which would in turn be able to sublease that land to farmers for agricultural use?
Yes.
That would be possible? Okay, so that's good news to hear because, yeah, okay. And so another question then, it has to do with housing. And this is related to a statement on page 10 of the draft, which I'm going to read a little bit of. Although the land bank mandate does not support the development of housing, there may be the opportunity to partner for partnerships in collaboration with to develop farmer housing on farmed land bank preserves, if it is not inconsistent with stewardship management plans and so on. My question would be, which agencies locally would you see would the land bank be able to partner with to create housing for farmers? Can you name any agencies that you would see would be obvious people that we would work with?
Yeah, certainly the affordable housing organizations that we have, we'd be more than happy to talk to. Probably the closest we've come so far is with the Lopez Community Land Trust, where they've actually purchased property that we have a conservation easement on, and it has structures and they're housing it and they've leased it. We also helped them in one of their latest acquisitions down by Lopez Hill, where there was a big piece of property. We ended up with, they purchased it. We ended up purchasing 75 acres from them, which was the forested part. But then there's the open area, which is suitable for farming. And that's what they're pursuing is creating a homestead or two. I'm not exactly sure how that's going to shape up, but and I think they're doing a conservation easement with a Semon Preservation Trust on that. But that's the kind of thing where, you know, if there's a bigger property where we might be interested in purchasing the part that has the most natural resource value or wild value, and you had another organization like Lopez Community Land Trust that wanted to purchase or run the agricultural area, we're all over that. That's something we're happy to explore.
So when you're talking about affordable home agencies here in the county, I'm assuming you're talking about things like the Home Trust. And yeah, okay, great. I think that's my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Any other members of the public who would like to ask a question or make a comment about this policy? Any commissioners who would like to make a comment about the draft that's in front of us? Jim?
My comment is more of a question to Bruce Robinson, and that is, given the fairly common knowledge that farming is hard, is there really what kind of demand is there for people? I mean, how many people are out there looking to not only lease farmland, but also live on that farmland?
Right. Well, I can't say how many people there are altogether, but we are right now entertaining meetings with some young people that are interested in homesteading, farming, and there's just no way they can see that they can afford, of course, to buy land. It's almost prohibitive at this point, especially any land of any size that you would have enough space to actually farm. So I can't say how many altogether. We haven't done a survey of the whole county or even of the whole island, but we are in the midst of talking with folks that are interested in this sort of thing. And I think it's also, the idea is that I think with climate change on its way, it seems to me that we need to be more resilient and have more food available to ourselves. And I don't think people of my age are going to be providing much of that. I might be able to provide for myself, but I can't see myself providing for the island. So we are concerned about making the island more resilient and trying to bring more multi-generational, a more multi-generational aspect to the island, because we are certainly aging as it goes, and most of these young people are planning to either find something soon or leave. So that's kind of my impetus, and this could be the model for how this could work. If we were able to get something started here, we could maybe use that as a model for how to develop this more extensively.
Any other comments or questions from commissioners? Mike?
I have a quick question. The document, is what I recall, is great about defining what we believe in and what we should charge. One of the biggest challenges to farmers is economic. You know, they can work very hard and they don't make really enough a sustainable living. And part of the real reason is the cost of land, which I think was mentioned by Bruce. And is by our mandate and by our rules, are we unable to provide low rent agricultural property for use? Is there anything in here that says we promote the profitability of agriculture and sustainability of agricultural businesses? Or are we restricted from being able to do that because we have to charge fair market value?
I don't think there's anything that prohibits us from doing a variety of things. What we have done is lease property to farmers, and it is at a low rate. So it's kind of, our goal at the outset was to remove the cost of land from the equation. Now, of course, what we learned was that infrastructure costs are astronomical, honestly. So we've spent a lot of money on infrastructure, even on properties where there's no residents, just the cost of fencing and providing water, electricity, those kinds of basic things that we need to lease a property, we put money into. I don't know, Charlie, you might want to follow up on that.
Yeah, I'd just say that we do our, that's part of the policy, is to establish a fair market value, and we've done our best recently with Kaufelt, having the consultant look into that, and that, it's a challenging number to land on, looking at local models, local examples, calling all the lease farmers around, and where we land seems fairly affordable. I think we're looking at about $30 an acre per year for pasture, and a couple $100 an acre for irrigated cropland. So it ends up being fairly affordable. And yeah, as Lincoln says, it gets trickier with the infrastructure. Kaufelt's the only place we have housing, and that we also tried to land on a fair rental value, which I believe we did. Mm-hmm. So it's also potentially negotiable as far as stewardship services the lessees can help us with, whether it's fencing, weed management, kind of outside their basic lease responsibilities and obligations. So I also wanted to say that while I have the mic, in regards to Bruce's comments, and we talked about this at the community meeting also, there's some parallel efforts and conversations going on with the Ag Guild currently, and we're at that table with the Beginner Farmer Rancher Development Grant. And I know there's some conduits between the two groups, but yeah, lots of lots of energy going into trying to help young farmers, beginning farmers, farmers in general, access land, and housing and infrastructure is a huge part of that. So lots of people trying to wrap their heads around that question. And I don't know if Candace is here. She might have some to add to the beginner farmer rancher thoughts. Her hand's up, I see.
Oh, good. Go ahead, Candace.
Hi, everybody. I also want to just respond to Jim's question, and that was to say that I can get you numbers, Jim, on the beginning farmers who've been contacting the Ag Guild through this beginning farmer and rancher grant program that we've been running. So this is the second iteration of that, of a grant program. So we had one a couple of years ago, and then a year or two passed, and now we have another one going. So we are always being contacted by new farmers wanting to get going, but I can get you the numbers if you like.
Well, I don't necessarily need numbers. I was just curious about the kind of demand that's out there.
Well, I mean, I can give you statistics. I can tell you the types of people who are contacting us. And I can also give you the numbers of people who are matched with land. So that's part of the grant project, is to match new farmers with farmland. So we continue to work on that. It's not something that has stopped, even we don't, sometimes when we don't have a grant to make it happen, it still happens.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Miles, do you have anything you want to add or comment on?
No, I think Charlie's done a really good job of addressing all the questions, and the comments I made before have been addressed, so I'm good.
I wasn't at the last meeting, but so I'll just kind of do a quick little statement. When I saw that we hadn't approved this and I saw that it was in our packets again, I was like, oh gosh, I'm gonna read this again. But I did read it again, and I'm just so grateful for the work that went into it. It's such a nice, solid, for the most part, understandable document. And I've seen many iterations of this, and I can see all the work that went into it. And I think everyone that worked on it should be really proud of what they finally landed on. It's a really great document. And that being said, I have a couple minor things. When I read through, I have lots of big check marks that resonated for me that I was so happy to see, and on many paragraphs, just check. So my suggestions or my questions now should not prevent the approval of this policy. I'm just going to throw it out there to maybe think about or find out more information in the future. So the one thing that I still grapple with, and maybe it'll just be a goal to see how that manifests, but in the summary of conservational goals, support pathways for affordable, equitable, and long-term access to farmland. I just need to know where that takes us, or what exactly is envisioned there. I'm comfortable having it there, equitable. That speaks to, whether we charge fair market value. I guess there's many things that go into that. So that's just something that comes up. And then there's this question that keeps coming up under page 10, agricultural infrastructure objectives. And in the third bullet, rent will be based on fair market value with the possible adjustment for the rate based on the lessee's contribution to qualified maintenance. And then that comes up again on page 11 in the fifth bullet, eligible maintenance, some kind of an adjustment. And I thought we were told a while back by John Kane that we can't do that, or some fashion of, we can't adjust the lease rate based on work done, but maybe I'm remembering that wrong. But that's a question I just have, is in fact whether or not that can be done, because that page 11 bullet mentions the county's small works roster, kind of minor work, so maybe it's picked up in there, I don't know. And then that's it. So those are the only observations that I have in this final read, but Thank you so much for all the work that went into that. So if we don't have any other discussion, do I have a motion to approve San Juan County Conservation Land Bank Agricultural Overview Objectives and Policy for 2022? Whoop. No motion, but go ahead, Charlie.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out again that I do have a few minor changes based on Sandy's feedback and potential the climate change section. Happy to, yeah, if you guys think it's just ready to go, or I don't know what the other options are to vote on that with some minor changes, what that looks like, but I understand probably all don't want to read this again next month.
I guess my question would be the Sandy's adjustments, are they material to the point that they change the content of the intent of the policy?
I don't think anything substantial. There was a couple minor changes to content and then basic edits.
And then the addition of climate change, I wonder, not knowing what that looks like, could it be addressed as an addendum or an attachment to an adopted policy? What do you think, Lincoln? I mean, I'm just trying to have this finished, but.
Yeah, I think we're good to go, honestly. If we've got more to add on to this going forward, we can do that. You know, we can revisit down the road, but I think for now, I think we're ready to go, honestly.
Maybe Charlie, when you have that, the climate change portion ready drafted, we could bring that back to a commission meeting for a reading. And does that sound?
Okay? Yeah, that sounds reasonable.
Can we make or can I make a move to I guess accept or approve this condition upon minor edits and then we can move on from here and just review what Charlie comes back with us without having to do the whole process?
Yes, you want to go ahead and make that motion?
Okay, yeah, well, yeah. So then I move to approve or accept the San Juan County Conservation Land Bank Agriculture Overview Objectives and Policy of 2022, pending minor editorial changes.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mike. Any further discussion? All right. All those in favor say aye or indicate aye. Aye. Jim, okay. Any opposed? And any abstained? Okay. Policy is approved unanimously. Thank you. That's great. Good work. Okay, so the last item on the agenda is our outreach and volunteer report. And the primary topic is the upcoming community conversations on the 20th and the 27th.
Tanya is out of town, so Erin's going to pick this one up.
Great.
Yeah. So I'm going to read off a list of dates and events for the rest of April. Wednesday, the 20th is the Lopez Community Conversation. Thursday, the 21st, there's the kickoff of a volunteer event at the Salish Seed Nursery. So that's going to be, I think it's the third Thursdays of every month. There'll be a volunteer party at the nursery. On Sunday, April 24th, there's a tour reimagining gardening with natives and near natives, and still room to sign up for that for folks that are interested. Wednesday, April 27th, in that evening is the Orcas or District 2 community conversations. And then on Saturday, April 30th is the Lopez Ride the Rock event. So Tanya will host a booth for that. And I think for complete list, you can go to the events calendar on our webpage as well. But that's a little summary that Tanya provided.
Great. And that tour, what island is that tour on?
I believe that's San Juan. Yep. I wonder if this is in concert with the Master Gardeners and if Judy has anything to offer.
Yes. Is on the 24th.
Will you be attending, Judy?
I will be. I registered yesterday and Tanya told me I'm in.
Peter,
You
you had
didn't
a
say-
question? Oh, sorry.
It didn't say how many other people might have already registered, but it is limited to 12. My understanding.
Oh, wow.
Krista, I meant to get something in on the stewardship section, if it's not too late, just to briefly.
No, it's great.
Okay, so I just wanted to update the commission on the Caulfield electrical upgrades. So as you all remember, in the reserve study, we had an estimate of $65,500 for electrical upgrades. I recently put out a request for quotes to the Small Works roster, the MRSC. That's the list of approved contractors on, in the region, basically, that are willing to work out here. And I got exactly one proposal, and it was quite high, more than twice the estimate. I then reached out to a few more on the mainland to see if I could find something different, and have come back to after a revision of that one proposal by the contractor, about $140,000 for this, $134,000. So roughly twice the original estimate. Part of that can be explained by a rapid increase in materials costs. And that seems to be likely to happen again. So I'm trying to lock that materials price in the event that we can go forward with this. Another part of it is trenching costs by a subcontractor just through the roof. And the prevailing wage rate, which was anticipated, but I don't know, the combination of those things and just the general lack of availability of contractors or interest by contractors kind of leaves us where we are. I mean, I think the contractor that we have the proposal from is Pickett Spring Electric, very reputable Orcas-based contractor, and I'm confident they will do a great job. So I shared the proposal with Lincoln and checked in with David Myland because of his contracting background, and had a few exchanges with him, and he's supportive of moving forward with this current quote, pending assurance that we can get the materials locked in at the proposed price. So I'm ready to go with it, but just wanted to make the commission aware of that somewhat significant departure from the previous estimate.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, I don't see that we have any choice on this one. It's something that we know we've needed to do. Partly there are life safety issues with this, and just another infrastructure thing. It's fun to run a farm.
Just, for the record, when I look at what I paid to wire my new house last year, and I look at the extent of the work at Caulfield, it's a lot. It's many, many times the work done here. And I think in retrospect, I should have pushed harder for that original estimate last year to say, hey, are you sure? Well, let's round up. I just kind of let the number come to us and used it, but I should have pushed harder to think about the times and, the potential for cost to escalate, but it's kind of, that's what we got then, and this is what we get now. So I think I'm definitely in favor of moving ahead with it.
And the off-island quote you got, if I remember correctly, was 100,000 more.
Yeah, it was a verbal quote, and it was, flying people in every day, and it's. I think Pickett Spring will do a great job, and they know the system there better than anyone at this point, and have a good reputation on the island.
Great. Well, it's non-negotiable. It is kind of, we have to do it. So that's.
Yep. We'll put it into an amended budget also, but I think we need to get going on it.
Okay, then that is the end of the agenda that I have in front of me. Any other comments from commissioners for the good of the order or anything? All right. All right, well, I'm going to declare this meeting adjourned at 10:40. Thanks so much, everybody. Nice to see everybody.
Thanks,
It's
Krista.
Friday. Yay.
Nice job, Krista. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks. Nice to see you guys.